Hello! It's been a while since I've recorded a YouTube video, so I thought I'd give a little update on what's happening with the Pont language. Um, it's difficult sometimes to know exactly what's best, what's the best way to do something. So I'm having to do a lot of self-experimenting to try to put the pieces together that I've worked up over the years and make them all work as nicely as a team as possible. I wish I could get some feedback from people, but unfortunately, I've been doing this basically on my own. And any rate, um, thought some people might be interested in a little about the number system. I recently published on Facebook a short description of the number system, starting out with an introduction to binary and how binary numbers can be named in the Pont language, which some mathematicians out there might be interested in finding out a little more about. But the average person, I'm guessing, is probably not too terribly interested in counting in binary or octal or hexadecimal or what have you. So, um, here's a little brief YouTube intro to counting in Pont. First off, if you're using the English dialect of Pont, you can always just count in English. You don't have to throw your language away when you start learning Pont. And I know this is a bit of a foreign idea, but I'm hoping that that it'll catch on and not seem too easy to be worthwhile. Um, if you want to qualify your numbers, your English numbers in Pont, and mark them as numbers, there are a few different choices for doing that. And I'll start out by giving some of the Pont numbers, and you can get an idea of how that would be done before I go and try to give an example with the English. So, in Pont, um, in ordinary base 10 numbering, you have, of course, the single digit numbers ne, which is 0, u, which is 1, du, which is 2, tri, which is 3, qua, which is 4, pe, which is 5, zi, which is 6, he, which is 7, ko, which is 8, que, which is 9. And for 10, you have te. Now, the fully qualified numeric forms have an N on the end. There's also an additive form, which has an F on the end. So, for example, the additive forms are oof, doof, trief, quaff, pef, zif, hef, kof, quef, and tef for adding 10. Now, the tef is the one that you're probably going to want most to know. However, this is a question of style choice. And again, this is something I can't really test on my own what other people are going to like. But for example, the number 30 in English, the 3 part is pronounced first. The number 13 in English, also the 3 part is pronounced first. Now, the numbers in their raw form, the Pont numbers, I should say, in their raw form, without the ending attached to them, are considered multiplicative. For example, to say do dogs is basically saying 2 times dog. Um, it's a subtle difference, but in making the word forms, it comes in kind of handy. If I want to say, for example, 30, I would say 310, which means 3 times 10. If I wanted to say 13, I have two choices. I can say 13, which means 3 times 10, or I can say teftrin. Sorry, triften, which is 3 plus 10, or I can say teftrin, which is 10 plus 3. Notice trin is the fully qualified form of 3. Tef is the additive form of 10. So teftrin is the regularized way of saying 13. Triften would be in line with the English number 13 and the order of putting the 3 before the 10. So again, that's a question of choice, a matter of style, how a person prefers to form their numbers. If I was to try counting out, say for example, to 20 or 30, something like that. Just to give you an example, what I would prefer to use personally is the standard order, or in other words, a regular order where 13 and 23 and 33 and 43 all are formed the same way with the 3 on the end instead of the 3 on the beginning, like the English word 13. So, for example, it would be un, dun, trin, quan, pen, zin, hen, con, quen, ten. Tef un, tef dun, tef trin, tef quan, tef pen, tef zin, tef hen, tef con, tef quen, duten. Du tef un, du tef dun, du tef trin, du tef quan, du tef pen, du tef zin, du tef hen, du tef con, du tef quen, triten. Triten, of course, being 30. And in this case, 13 would have been teftrin. And I'm guessing that's what I did, although I wasn't really paying much attention. I just, this is what came out naturally. Ordinal numbers are signified in Pont with the addition of an EF or F ending. EF, if you want to pronounce the well, fo, really. If the names of the letters in Pont would be fo. But so, for example, un becomes unef first. Du becomes, or du or dun becomes dunef second. Trin, trinef third. Quan, quanef fourth. Penef fifth. Zinef sixth. Henef seventh. Konef eighth. Quenef ninth. And tenef 10th. Quantitative numbers can be formed by adding an om ending. So, for example, to say the quantity 3, I could simply say trinom. If I wanted to give a time of day, the temporal ending am allows me to say 3 o'clock as simply trinam. If I wanted to say 3 as an article, as in like rather than to say the 3 dogs, to simply say 3 dogs, where 3 is not just a number but the article used in the sentence. The article ending ya can be attached. So, for example, here's where I can start mixing the English in, and I can say, for example, the ya 3 dogoi. Dogoi is the plural of dogs, the plural of dog, using the plural noun ending oi. Ya is the article ending, the ya dogoi. So I could say the ya 3 dogoi, or I could simply say 3 ya dogoi. In this case, if I say 3 ya dogoi, there's an advantage to that, not only in the fact that it shortens it down somewhat, but then I can also take advantage of the e ending from the letter I, the English letter I, or the Pont letter E, which is, the little straight line with the dot written over it, which is the pronoun ending. And so if I say 3 ya dogoi, I can later on refer to them simply as 3e. And that's kind of like saying he or she or it or they, except for this particular they refers to the 3, which goes back to the article 3 ya. So 3 ya dogoi becomes 3e as a pronoun. The pronoun structuring in Pont is quite flexible. Basically, any word at all can be turned into a pronoun and used as such, and can be quite handy actually for shortening things down, simplifying things without getting confusing, like a lot of languages do when you have multiple entities that can be referred to as he or she or whatever the case might be. And it is also interesting to note for people who have always kind of disliked having to choose a gender in order to be able to use a pronoun, that by doing it this way, you have a lot more choices. In Pont, you can use the word young as a pronoun, simply youngy. Old as a pronoun, oldie. Um, if I wanted to say if I wanted to say he or she or it as a pronoun, again, the English words, I can simply tack the E on the end, and that will let any Pont speaker of any dialect of Pont, regardless whether it's English based or not, know that you're using a pronoun. So he becomes he-e, she becomes she-e, they becomes they-e. We becomes we-e. There is no real need to have the I and me, or you and okay, he and him, her, she. Yeah, I guess you only has the one form. Any rate, but at the same time, you can also form plurals. For example, you in English, um, as I was just being reminded to myself, lacks the ability to specify different forms. In Pont, if you wanted to say you in the plural, you can simply stick another E in front of it. So iui is the plural of you. Imii is the plural of me. So if I wanted to say we, I don't actually need a separate word for we. I can simply say imii. um, Having multiple forms, multiple different ways of forming the same meaning in a pronoun can also come in handy, because if you do run into a situation where you have, for example, um, more than one we in a sentence, if, for example, I'm talking about you and me, and I'm also talking about me and them, me and them is one we, and me and you is another we. Well, in Pont, there are actually words specifically for that. If I say, if I say, um, "Vif me," "Vif me" means you and me, and again, the F in there is from the numbers. It's an additive ending. V is you, me is me. If I say "Vif me," that's actually you and me. If I say um, "Jif me," that is it and me, or he and me, or she and me. Or if I wanted to specifically specify that it's not an it, I could say "Rif me." Um, if I want to make that plural, I could say "Irif me." If I wanted to make the me plural, I could say "Irifimi." So I have a lot of choices there, and it makes for a lot more flexibility when trying not to be ambiguous. But of course, it does take some learning, and I dare say I'm not fluent myself, because I have no one to practice with. I've got a lot of knowledge of it in my head, but actual fluent usage, I'm not really sure if I could do on first try. I think it would take me some practice. It is a language, and as much as I've done my best to make it as easy to learn as possible, um, there is also, well, as easy to learn as possible within the parameters that I've set out for it. There is also, of course, the fact that I have set certain parameters that it has to meet. The Pont language is intended to be a bridging language. It is intended to connect one language to another, and in order to do that, certain complications have to be a part of it. You have to, for example, have the ability to say your numbers in two different directions. So, for example, if I wanted to say 30 as 10 times 3, or as 3 times 10, I have to have that option in Pont. And the Pont numbering system itself does allow that. Now, the English version of the Pont numbering system does not. It could be adapted to, and that would, take a small amount of doing, but naturally the English numbers are used as English numbers, and all you do to them is stick the endings on them to tell that they are numbers, or that they are quantities or times.